Hello everyone. So this session is about supporting multi-tenancy and network policies or isolations with the Kuryr-kubernetes integration. Here on the Etherpad you can see some summary of the current status. So I'll start with just generic authorization and authentication stuff in Kubernetes. A lot of options, different plugins for authorization and authentication. The Keystone support is currently experimental as the authentication plugin, but it works.
Do you know if there has been any update lately in the last few cycles? Like, do you still need to enable it with the experimental Keystone URL or?
According to the documentation, yes, but I didn't try it.
Okay.
So we can check.
Yeah.
But
Just
anyway, my
No, I just wanted to say that most of the documentation I could find was like from 1.3 or 1.5 times. I just wondered if there was something new.
Same here. And for authorization policies, there are different options like the static one, like ABAC, based on attributes, and also the role-based, which is more dynamic stuff. But it's a bit orthogonal to the networking multi-tenancy. It's more like access to API and what each user is allowed to, what operation each user is allowed to apply in the scope of namespaces and different entities. There was also discussion in the Kubernetes networking team about multi-tenancy. You can see in the references section a link to the document. So nothing decided yet, but linked to this, there is also discussion for multiple network support, and from different direction, it leads to probably adding network as an API object. At least my understanding is that OpenShift guys are driving towards this direction.
Okay, I didn't notice that.
At least
I'll have to ask.
So it will be great if you can confirm it, but at least this is what I understood from the discussions that were going on. And according, at least from the year ago, according to some presentation they gave at the OVS summit, whatever, it was presented that internally there is networking entity, and it allows to map projects to networks and networks to namespaces. But let's say, regardless if there is a standing by itself networking entity, network API entity or not, the drive is to map a project to one or more namespaces. So I guess we can assume that namespace is a unit for to present, to serve different tenants.
The granularity is on namespaces, and I think that's quite safe to assume as a building block, because I don't think it's going to be changed.
Yes, it makes sense. It's like some container for resources, so it definitely makes sense to bind to different tenants or projects.
Yeah, then there is contention whether inside the namespace, if all the backends or implementations should support the same kinds of isolation and so on, but yeah, I'm not sure how that's gonna go, right?
Right, but even checking different vendor solutions, I think we lost. Okay. So Tony, currently you're sharing one of the links and not the Etherpad. So many different vendor solutions that try to support multi-tenancy also base their approach on giving a namespace as a unit, and with different SDN support, they do something which is very similar to what we had with the Midonet POC, that map a namespace to separate a neutron network with its own subnet, which is just acquired from the subnet pool. And then it actually provides isolated L2, let's say a 2 domain. And I think that if we are going through the Etherpad, so coming to the isolation and network policies bullet, we can follow comparing to the current approach that we have one single network, which is very corresponding to the Kubernetes view, one single flat network, right? So we can have a network and subnet pair namespace, and then try to apply also the networking policy based on this namespace like separation approach, networking wise as well.
Right. So if I understand this correctly, one first candidate to action item would be to make subnet driver that instead of returning always the same subnet that is configured, that it takes them from a pool, or?
Yes, actually we'll have to extend the current implementation in several points because we'll also need another project driver. Currently we just take the project ID from the config file. So here we should, so it depends if we want to introduce as well the standalone network API object or not, or maybe just based on some sort of annotation.
I would like to have the project one as well. My question is, where, like right now, where would we be taking the tenant from, like the project ID?
So here in possible approaches, my assumption was that it's sort of given. So it either some namespace annotation,
right?
That probably we assume that comes from the cluster manager or whatever, but it's some property of the namespace. Or if there is standalone network object, so network will have this attribute and network maps to namespace.
I think we discussed it sometime earlier, and I proposed that we'll have a CLI for Kuryr that would allow us to set those annotations. So pretty much like we have a Neutron client, we'll have Kuryr client that will set those annotations on namespaces, for example. And that was actually one of the reasons why we have that many drivers like security group driver, project driver, and all that stuff. So
well, yeah, but the ideal would be that you would actually be able to do that with kubectl, right? To set the tenant that you want. So we should collaborate on the multi-tenancy documentation, like so that whatever they decide to mark the namespaces with, we can support the same.
I'm not sure if it's a good idea. I mean, there is another branch in here, right? So what will be the first class citizen? Will we be creating projects in OpenStack based on the namespaces from Kubernetes, or will we map?
We'll have to use something that was managed by administrator. It's not
right. Our Keystone engagement is only read-only, so it's only for getting a token, and that's it.
So we'll have some sort of mapping between namespace name and project ID. It should be stored somewhere. I doubt that Kubernetes guys would add some specific entity into Kubernetes that would map to OpenStack. So
well, I mean that's a bit the thing, right? If you're using the RBAC in OpenStack, and you would use the Keystone backend for it. I wonder where that information gets stored. Like, should we? And I don't have an answer for this. Well, I have kind of an answer that I think that we shouldn't, but like one option would be like, okay, we just provide multi-tenancy only when you're using a Kubernetes Keystone backend, right? And then we could leverage the information that must get stored somewhere for that.
Yeah, I mean, my point was that if we're storing those in annotations, how will secure those annotations from someone updating them?
Actually, in Kubernetes, there is something called service accounts.
Right.
And it's something that maybe I'm not sure I understand all the details, a bit more to explore there, but it's some sort of Kubernetes managed roles, and
Well, yeah.
it maps to namespaces. So maybe it's something that we can use like users.
Yeah. So my idea for that was that we say, okay, a proper administrator would use RBAC and the service accounts, and we would get a Kuryr service account for making all our operations have access to practically everything. And then it's the duty of the cluster administrator to make sure that the certain requests, like the path for changing the things that would affect the translation, are not allowed. Like a tenant or a user, if you will, or a role should only be able to change items inside its namespace, not the namespace itself, I would say.
But yeah, if you can change items inside your namespace, you can update this annotation and point it to different tenant in OpenStack. So what will
like which annotation? You're talking about the pod annotation, or?
well, namespace annotation, for example.
Well, no, but what I was saying is that the users don't have any need to be able to change the namespaces. They can have them read only.
I agree. It sounds reasonable. Actually, I would expect that namespace was created for different users, but not by different users.
It's all configurable, so you could have power users that can do things like that. But I mean, it's in the discretion of the cluster admin.
Okay, but another option would be probably to store this information on the OpenStack side, like maybe we have tags in Keystone. I'm not sure.
I've not checked. To be honest, I have not checked.
Something like labels or tags. Maybe we can use that.
It's an option. Then what we would be storing is for each project. If I get the proposal right, for each project we would be having a tag per each namespace that belongs to that project.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the tag that represents the namespace. But I'm not sure if it's available. I'm not very familiar with Keystone.
Yeah. I don't think any of us is, but it's something
so
that we should check.
Action item.
Yes, thank you. All right. So yeah, those are the two options. Please, Irena, put also the second option. In any case,
sorry, can you remind me the second option? So
yeah, the second option is to like
labels, tags.
it would be to leverage the I'll let you write so I don't like step on your writing the first class item. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. So the second one is
annotations.
to check Yeah, to check for role-based access to namespace annotations, like if we could make them like safe to use so that the users cannot modify, and then we would probably just give guidelines for the configuration for safety, and that's it. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, my explanation was not very writable as an action item.
Yeah, it's enough
Yeah.
for me to rephrase it later.
Okay, cool.
It will be sure easier to store it in annotations.
Right. It's a matter of how easy it is. Like the thing is, if we mandate that the namespace object for the regular users be read only, or maybe that they can only create it. I think you can limit even at that level that you can only create it, but you cannot update it. You could say, okay, so they can create it. We as the service account put there the project ID, and then they cannot touch it, right? But
So
we
this
have to check
that we have, in addition, we have the Kuryr CLI to set the mapping.
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Either
And
that
it could be part of the namespace YAML declaration as well. Like a simple,
right. Yes.
a simple string. Yeah.
The problem with doing that is that then this operation would have to be performed by the cluster administrator, because if you let the create, then they could create specifying a project ID that is not theirs, and we would, since we have superpowers everywhere, we would just go with the flow, let's say. So it is safe with. I think it is safer to do what you proposed earlier, that the mapping is done with the CLI afterwards, or that we would have some checks, right? That when we're processing the annotation, we check that some project IDs, like that they cannot create anything on the admin one, but I don't really want to be in that business.
Anyway, since we have the driver-based approach, I think it's just a matter how this project ID is retrieved.
Yes, but I think that we should have like an action item for which is the first approach that we would like to have. We probably need information about where to store the things, right? But I think a basic one would probably be that with the CLI, we either put tags or annotations, I don't mind. And then when we are getting the pod resource, sorry, we check for from which namespace it is. We find the project ID. And then it's a question like, are we doing then always by default? Okay, always. I mean, with this first driver, that would be the subnet driver, getting from a subnet pool in each namespace in a different subnet, or are we making that have to be explicit on the user side, or what's the preferred first driver?
In case we have CLI and we use annotations, it's pretty simple. We just specify it on the CLI and it gets stored in the annotation.
But what do we specify? Do we specify a pool, or do we specify one per namespace? One subnet per namespace?
You can have a network per namespace, not just subnet.
Sure. No, when I say subnet, I mean subnet, but like using the neutron default of having rather than default common practice that you just have one subnet for IPv4, one subnet for IPv6 per network, instead of having multiple subnets per network.
I mean, those drivers would be like 20 lines of code and not very different from each other. like
Sure.
only different neutron calls, so no reason to not support all 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah,
So either subnet specified on CLI or network or
right now we
pool.
only have subnet driver, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
Subnet and project ID.
we have
And security groups.
subnet driver, but it doesn't mean it's the subnet is the outcome from this, right? So it's the result from this
Yes,
query.
of course.
But you can query. I mean,
I
if you
think it's
store
actually
subnet,
sort of isolation profile that we want to support here. If we want it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, what is the isolation profile that we want? Yes.
Because we still, even for, no, it doesn't make sense to have different tenants and still share the same network.
No.
Maybe.
That I think that we can safely assume that will not need to happen. It's even a question in the network seek whether different networks should different namespace tenants should be able to communicate at the network level. So like not saying externally. So I think sharing networks by tenants is quite safe to say we don't need to do that.
Yeah, and actually there may be the case when for some reason overlapping IPs are required. So it will be another.
Yeah, that's a
Like
whole bunch of of problems. I mean, if you had to have communication, non-external communication between overlapping IPs of different tenants.
well, it's the problem in the Kubernetes design, I think. So
Right.
it's the way cluster IP work.
But the cluster IP would still be global, right? It's not
Yeah,
for tenants. So.
that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, you always have to forbid users to use that range. Like,
do any of you have some good contacts on the Kubernetes teams? Like maybe they plan to make those cluster IP like configurable, like plugins.
It is configurable, but just
Well, it's
like
configurable.
you can just define the
Yeah.
range.
Yeah. I mean, make those like CNI. So they have CNI for the configuration.
I don't think so. No.
Why don't they have the similar thing for the cluster IP?
It is like all these things, like even like how you load balance and so on. It is very much kube proxy centric, and I don't think that they have any interest to make network or let's say accessibility network interface. And I really don't think it's on their mind at all. Like for them, CNI seems to be the end all be all. Because there are ways to go around it with like OVN does or we do. It makes things more complicated. Like you don't have network creation and so on, but they think that that's the wrong answer to the question to a question that should not be asked. Like Docker does have those primitives, but I think the best approach to that would be to become part of the SIGNet meeting and proposing for some structural changes, but I don't think they would come before Kubernetes 2.0.
Then I think the action item should be to change the meeting time to something that any of us can consider to join.
Come on, 12 it's midnight. It's just the middle of the night. It's not even late. Yeah, well, I mean, it's when Ilya starts making patches, if I remember correctly.
So we have our candidate to join.
No, but
Please check if I got correctly the action item, and I think that maybe if we not do
right.
it before,
If
I
it's,
can.
yeah, if it's not configurable, at least we should ask whether there is a chance that it may be in a different range per namespace. I think that would be an important follow-up question.
Well, it's pretty much IPAM for cluster IPs. IPAM driver for cluster IPs.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
right
I
now,
would be...
it's kind of defeats all our attempts to do something in terms of multi-tenancy.
Tries to defeat.
I think
Well,
we still can map this range to the subnet pool and get subnets just allocated from the subnet pool, but probably won't let us do the overlapping IPs.
Right. No. You would have to forbid that range. And yes, I think that the approach is exactly what you said, to split it and to have some kind of quotas. It's not pretty, but it's what it is, and it gives more fairness than what Kubernetes has now, because in Kubernetes now you can just exhaust them from a single user and let the others to dry.
Yeah, actually, quotas is another interesting topic to consider with multi-tenancy, because from the Neutron perspective, we have quotas per tenant, right? How many networks it can create and how many ports. So if we are going in this direction, so we must have some correlation.
Wasn't there in the API working group in Kubernetes something about quotas? I don't remember now, but I think there was something.
I don't think I saw anything
now,
on network related. So there are quotas management for CPU, and so it's not it's in Kubernetes in general, not in the networking part. So you can have quotas.
So can you add it to the action item 5 maybe, to ask whether they are thinking about quotas in the networks? Right.
Okay, so maybe just the last part for this discussion is the network policies, which there for a while in Kubernetes, I think started from 1.12 or 13. I think it's still sort of experimental, but it's something that we should definitely support.
I don't think it's experimental. I think it's beta already, right?
It's already beta? Okay, perfect. So
I think so. I'm not sure. Let me check. I have it here loaded.
So the question, if you want to support this with the current mode that we have, the flat network mode, or
it's beta 1 already. If you look at the shared screen. Okay, go ahead.
So that means that it shouldn't be additional stuff to enable it once Kubernetes is deployed, right?
Right.
Yeah, so my question was if we want to support network policy with the current mode, with the one single network shared between all the pods, or we want to have network policy support once we have this subnet per namespace.
I would say afterwards.
The second one, you mean?
Yes, because I think that this will force us into using different security groups, and I don't remember the granularity. Is it service based? I think it is, right?
No, it's pod based, pod namespace based. And there are some discussions to make it.
The selector can be per pod.
Per pod and per namespace.
It can be per service as well.
I think there were discussions.
But my question was like, if you can get to the pod level, it already means that we probably have to add security group per per pod if there is a creation of a network policy that targets a single pod, right?
There is only namespace selectors and pod selectors. So you can apply it namespace.
Okay. So, like, is the idea that when we see a network policy object, we create a security group with whatever it entails, and then we check every time the selector changes on the object, on the modified, and then we apply it to all the necessary ports?
Yes, I think
Right.
it's pretty much
I
what we
think-
plan to do.
I think we'll get to the insane amount of rules this way.
Sure, absolutely.
Probably we'll have to map security group to labels. Actually, I think
labels?
that, yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, in the security group you have like source label and destination something. Can you share the link to the API?
What I went before? Sorry,
for the namespace policy object. I think you had it open somewhere.
Yeah, I had this. The network policy object.
Maybe you want
That's the
to
document.
see the
No,
spec?
I mean from the Kubernetes documentation. I'll try to find this.
If you send me the
I
link,
think it's number
I'll
5. Can you check this one?
Number 5. Okay. This?
Yeah, looks like this. Except it's from older documentation. But anyway.
This is older, you say, or which is older? We'd rather look at the newest one.
I think it doesn't have any version here, so
it should be the latest.
Yeah.
It should be. I'm not sure I tested, but
I've posted the links to the chat.
Okay, let me go to it.
Because the new documentation looks like this. They changed the layout.
Yes. This is what I was before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. With the new layout, there is no examples.
Yeah.
I like my examples.
Probably yours is better, indeed.
Well, I mean, we can just check the fields that are there, but what you're saying is that in the metadata, which is
we have pod selector, so which is label selector.
Yes.
And then we have those policy.
The policy spec.
Yeah, which is
it's like the label. You mean the label selector you're looking for?
And ports. From is network policy peer, which is also label selector. So we have like source label selector and a target label selector, and also ports. So what I'm thinking is that in the security groups we have we can like specify remote security group, not a IP address, but security group. So if we have labels mapped to, so if we operate not on the IP addresses, but on the groups of IP addresses which correspond to label selectors. So we have like we see a pod, right? So each pod has some set of label selectors.
Right.
For each
of labels.
Of labels, right.
The selectors are what target
Yeah,
the
yeah,
label.
yeah. So for each label, we create a security group. We of course need to check how many labels it is like.
Right, yeah. So basically,
But
every time a pod gets networked by us, we create a security group per label.
per label, right? So,
Okay.
but only if it's used in the
Network policies.
network policy, right? So, so it won't be on a pod watcher, pod handler, but on the namespace handler. But it will check the list of ports because
not in the namespace, in the network policy handler.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just adding the note that
Sure.
we should organize. Okay.
Well, that's a proposal.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of just more a requirement to reduce number of
Sure.
security groups and rules that are.
But the problem is, Ilya,
thing is
rules,
that
you always need
security groups, we have them like implemented with IP sets, which are effective. And if we go for like listing IP addresses, I'm not sure if those will map to IP sets. So having like a security group with like 1,000 rules with IP this to IP that would be probably, it will probably kill Neutron.
Only with the reference implementation, with the hybrid approach, right?
I'm not sure if even Open vSwitch open flow based one will survive this.
Okay.
So
the question I have about
it just won't scale.
Right. The question I have about using the labels as the mapping one-to-one with security groups is when you make a network policy target, like the selector target a service instead, you will also have to create a security group for that, right?
Maybe. I'm not sure how those label selectors target. Do they target services or do they only target pods?
For now, it's pods and namespaces, but I saw discussions to apply to services as well. And more than that, there were also discussions to not only to control the ingress traffic, but also have some policies for egress traffic, which may be a problem with security groups that we have, at least some options that were raised, so we definitely need to follow.
So you mean that we would need to use firewall as a service for those?
Yes, exactly.
Why? I think security groups that there is like a field, whether it's ingress or egress.
Yeah, but I don't remember exactly the details, but there were some options that just were not possible to apply with security groups. I think we discussed it previously with Mike. You remember, Tony, the previous cycle of the support, and there was some options.
Wasn't it for when the default for the namespace is allow all, and the rules or the network policy was for deny? But I don't know if finally that made it.
Yes, it sounds like this. Anyways, the devil is in the details. But given the current network policy spec, it seems possible to support everything with security groups.
Okay.
As far as I remember, I think egress traffic from the VM or pods point of view is there, but ingress traffic is the thing that is not there.
Ingress traffic from where?
I mean, from outside to the VM or to the container.
Well, I think like it's not there when you want to do like towards the internet, I think, or towards outside of the cluster. But if it's from other namespaces, I think it should be doable.
Just, I mean, what I have tried is just to throttle down the outgoing traffic from the VM to the outside world or to another VM, and that actually works.
Right.
But also another point to take is like for the nested containers, security groups, bandwidth limitation are not working yet, as there is this problem of how this trunk OBS port
which limitation?
We cannot apply security group rules at the when using trunk ports.
Why not? The traffic goes all the way down to the BRINT.
Yes, but the way the trunk port are connected to the BRINT is a different. For a normal VM, you have like a tap device or internal device connected to the BRINT.
Yeah, but I thought that the limitation was only for the QoS, not for the security groups.
Yeah, I mean for the QoS, yeah, to throttle down traffic. Yes.
But for security groups, it should be applied. It's only the limitation is for the QoS, right?
Yes, because security groups are applied at flows. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, QoS, is there, Irena? Sorry that I'm going into tangential, but is there already the QoS in the SIGNet? Like, I know that there was some discussion, but did they create any alpha or any kind of API
at least
for it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Okay, so I guess that for now we can ignore the limitation. Like, we need to work with Newton to fix it, but we can ignore it for now.
Yeah, actually, something which is not part of, at least I didn't include it in this session, but we probably need to consider going further is the ingress controller part.
Beautiful topic, the ingress controllers. Yeah, so I was last week on a discussion with Octavia people, and I think quite a lot, or almost everything, that ingress controllers allow you to do can be done with Octavia layer 7 policies. So we have a way forward with that. Then, of course, I was also talking with Dragonflow, and I also want to talk with OVN people to see if maybe some of those things could be done by SDNs directly. Because otherwise, I think that the most likely scenario will be that you'll have so we would be creating everything through Octavia, and then probably the driver SDN driver would map some of those to have it as a distributor load balancer. Some of the layer 7 probably would go through an amphora, and then it would mean that probably we should do some resource management. And I had some proposal for the ingress it's similar to the ingress controller one. It was for the OpenShift router, which I mentioned some time ago, which is more or less a load balancer that discriminates based on the host name of the HTTPS or HTTP request, which is similar to what an ingress controller does. So the proposal is that basically you would have an Octavia load balancer for each ingress controller and for each service. Then so the service would be like now a load balancer, then a listener per each port, and then a pool. And I think that the pool could be a single one for the whole service. And then for each ingress controller, depending on the layer 7 policy, it would, if it goes to the if it goes to all the pods, or if the granularity is service, it would go to the same pool object. If it's another one, it would need separate pool objects. But I think that the most common case is to to say, so depending on this ingress, I'm going to this service or to this other one, and then we can reuse the pool objects. We would just make different layer 7 policy rules and layer 7 policy objects. So probably a single layer 7 policy object with a single rule with a redirect to pool action. That's it. I know that I may not have explained myself very well. I'll put this please as an action item that I send an email with the drawing. I have a diagram for this. I will open it now if you want to look at it. Let's see where I have it. Pictures. Yeah. So this is it. But what you can assume is that this Kuryr router VIP, this is for the OpenShift router. This is what you would have for a layer 7, sorry, for an ingress controller. So you would have a load balancer, then you would have a listener, and then the hostname rule that would say go to the pool of the service, for example, and sorry, the line in fact goes from the listener to the pool. It's just that it's the rule that says the action is redirect to pool based on the path or the host name or whatever the ingress controller allows you to do. You guys can see it, right? Okay. So
by Octavia, you mean the full implementation or the API and the rest done by us?
Well, I mean, we would just use the API of Octavia, of course. As I said, it's driver based, so you can make everything driver based, but I don't think we need it. There is other things that we could use Octavia drivers for, so like for example, I have to finish a diagram because right now it's only in my mind. So one could argue that I need to start it about how to make amphoras in Kubernetes, so we would be able to use Kubernetes resources and Kuryr and network pods.
Tony, Amphora is the Octavia HA proxy VM or more than this?
Right. Yes. That's it. It's a VM, and it has its own pooling of them and so on. So basically, what it is, it's you can think about it as a compute resource, a VM or a group of containers. That it has an API that the Octavia sends requests to, like set up a new member or whatever, and then it has the other side, and they are communicating via Unix socket that configures and updates HA proxy. It sends a signal when it needs to reload the configuration and so on. So that's what it is. And I have a proposal for doing it with pods, but would need some modification. And the reason for wanting to get that out of the door is because otherwise they are thinking about using Nova LXD. And well, Nova LXD is not packaged in some distributions, so it worries me a bit to depend on that. And also because right now they don't have it working yet. So yeah, it's an internal action item for me to try to come up with an alternative container-based implementation. It would be easier with Docker, but I don't want to need to have a cluster, a Docker Swarm cluster, just to give load balancing to a Kubernetes cluster. And the reason for that is that in the HA proxy side, what they do is when they are load balancing a member that is not reachable, they just create a port in that network and hot plug it to the network. Sorry, to the network, to the VM. Which
it's the right thing to do. It solves the TCP timeouts.
But you cannot do that with Kubernetes, like just out of the door, right? So the proposal revolves around getting the pod a trunk port, and then leveraging trunk ports for the dynamic attaching of different networks. But yeah, it needs a lot of changes in Octavia.
I thought you mean that they transfer the IP address that went down to another node.
No. What I was talking about is, let's say, so if you look at the picture, let's say that you add another pod in worker VM3, and that pod is not on 10.0.0.20, which is reachable by the Octavia VM, but it is in 20.0.0.20/24.
Okay.
So what they do is they create a new port and hot plug the port to the VM, which Nova LXD will supposedly, it has the API for doing it. They don't have it working yet, but it could do it. But with Kubernetes, you would basically have to relaunch the pod with well, first it doesn't have multi-network support and another limitation. So the way to do the only way that I could see to do that would be with having the default port that you would give the pod a parent port for the trunk, and then when you need to add a network that is not reachable, and Octavia has already the code for checking that it is reachable, to add the support and just make it reachable this way.
Tony, can I ask you to add the action item for what for the
For all this explanation?
For the scope of what you're thinking to do as part of
yes. I want to
item.
make a diagram and I'll obviously publish it both internally and externally. We do not have a session for this week, but I'll definitely make the diagram probably by the beginning of next week, so I'll post it. So if you can put an action item in this Etherpad is good enough.
So what I added for now is just need to address ingress controller support, provide proposal
draft. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah,
it's enough. Okay.
That's enough. Maybe put also Octavia compute resource as well. So I know that to add also the part about what to do if you want to use pods as Amphora.
And related to multi-tenancy, I just added some note for that we need to take care of the resources pools, because currently we pre-allocated given that we have single tenant, but if there are multiple tenants, so it gets more complicated.
Right. This would be something for the CLI, right? If we and I think we all agree that having a CLI for making this kind of mappings is useful. Like to say we map this namespace to the CLI, to this tenant or project rather, then the CLI, you would make this mapping, the CLI would see that for this project we don't have any pool, so it would ask you if you want to create a pool, right? And if there is a pool, it would let you select which subnet from the pool you want, right? Is that a reasonable default behavior?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Like, of course, it would be nice to also not need to use the CLI and to have.
So we'll probably
we can assume we check the quotas and maybe just based on this do something. Yes.
I think we should have two modes: one that requires explicit intervention, and another one that can just automatically create. But the one that automatically creates obviously needs the drivers to be smart about it, like to at least presuppose that there is a pool, and the pool, I think that it is reasonable to say, okay, the project must have a pool for its namespaces.
Tony, we are now talking about CLI, but what I'm thinking is probably along with CLI, we'll also need some sort of web API because CLI.
I'm fine with that. I've been thinking about adding an API to the controller for a long time. I even had a project for the outreach program that put out an API for requesting stats. So if we make the CLI just send requests to one of the Kuryr controllers and make the code be actually inside the Kuryr controller, I think it's a good idea.
I mean, it's probably the only way we can provide security, because if CLI can access either
well, you would need the same credentials as you have for the Kuryr controller, so
yeah,
it's more about making sure that it's about locality of the code. I think the security is the same. You just need the credentials in any case. But the thing is, when the Kuryr controller adds this API endpoint,
I mean,
it has to use the token it is passed. So
well,
CLI.
I was thinking that we could have web API like super user mode, and yeah, but maybe you're right. Yeah.
Well, I would just, if they are talking to us with an admin token from Keystone, so we perform. Well, I don't think we even need to check the token. Just use whichever token they are using to talk to us. That's it, right?
Yeah, that's if we are storing all the information in the Kubernetes, in OpenStack. But if we were discussing that.
If we use annotations, it should work also, right? I mean, we get a request. So first, we try to get the resources, like not to create them, just to show them from Keystone. And I don't think that will succeed if we don't have the necessary permissions, right?
But that would mean that CLI will have to connect to both the Keystone and Kubernetes. I'm just thinking that. Well, anyway.
Sounds like we need additional session for CLI.
Yeah.
I think so. Well, we do have one, if I don't remember correctly. No, we have Kuryr-kubernetes client, which was the client for the Kubernetes side. Well, we can add it there, I think.
Yeah,
good idea. I think we can put it there. Let me see. Do I have it? No, we don't have it on the list of long explanation, but I'll add it now. Crap, I got a bit disconnected. Okay, well, I'll add it later. Anything else on this session? Because we'll run out of time.
No, it looks like we have pretty nice list of action items. So
very well. But I only see my name on one of them. I want people to propose themselves also. Eh? All right. So thank you all for joining. And yeah, I know that some of the action items already some people offered to look into.
Feeling better,
especially. All right. So let's continue tomorrow with the session about Kuryr-kubernetes resource management. I think will be led by Luis, right? Yes.
Yeah, I can do that.
Very well. So talk to you tomorrow, or earlier if you ping me. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.